The wind cut like a blade on Christmas night, sharp and unforgiving, and Sergeant Elena, Hawk, Ramirez knew the sound she heard wasn't the wind at all. It was the final helicopter pulling away, its rotors fading into the dark sky, leaving her behind in the mountains with nothing but a rifle, a cracked radio, and 12 wounded men depending on her to keep breathing until morning. They hadn't meant to leave her. That truth mattered, even as the cold seeped into her bones. The extraction had gone wrong. Enemy fire from the ridgeline, a wounded pilot, a forced liftoff before the bird was torn out of the sky. In the chaos, Hawk had shoved the last of her team aboard, stayed back to cover the retreat, and then watched the helicopter rise without her. She remembered locking eyes with her team leader through the open door, his face pale with disbelief as the distance grew. She had raised one gloved hand, not waving, just steady. Go. Live. Now silence pressed down, heavy and dangerous. Below her position, the rest of the platoon lay huddled in a ruined stone compound, Christmas lights from some long-abandoned village tangled in the rubble like ghosts of another life. The enemy knew they were there. They had been circling for hours, testing, probing, waiting for the moment when exhaustion would crack discipline and fear would do the rest. Hawk lay prone on the ridgeline, her sniper rifle nestled into the frozen earth. The rifle was older than most of the men she protected, scarred and dependable, like her. She had joined the teams to prove something, to herself, mostly. That she was more than the girl who grew up in a house where shouting replaced love, more than the kid who learned early how to disappear. In the SEALs, she had found purpose, and in the scope of her rifle, clarity. One breath, one squeeze, one choice at a time. Her radio hissed weakly. Hawk, this is Echo Actual, came the broken whisper of her team leader, Lieutenant Mark Sullivan. We're trying to reroute. Birds damaged. Earliest we can get back is sunrise. Sunrise. 8 hours away. I copy, Hawk said calmly, though her fingers were stiff and numb. We'll still be here. There was a pause, thick with everything he couldn't say. I should've. You did exactly right, she cut in. Take care of them. I've got the hill. The radio crackled again, then died. Hawk exhaled slowly, fog blooming in front of her face. Below, she saw movement, shadows slipping between rocks, figures cresting the lower slopes. The enemy was coming in earnest now. The first shot echoed across the valley, sharp and final. Hawk shifted smoothly, already tracking the next target. She worked methodically, conserving ammunition, choosing shots that broke momentum rather than chasing kills. She wasn't fighting to win a battle. She was fighting to buy time. Down in the compound, the men listened to the distant cracks of her rifle like a heartbeat keeping them alive. Corpsman Jake Miller pressed a bandage tighter around a teammate's leg and swallowed hard. That's Hawk, he said to no one in particular. She's still out there. She's not going to make it alone, another whispered. Jake shook his head. You don't know Hawk. Hours crawled by. Hawk's shoulders burned, her cheek raw against the stock. Memories crept in during the lulls. Her mother's laugh when Christmas had been good, rare and precious, the way her father once lifted her onto his shoulders to hang lights before the drinking took over, the first Christmas she spent deployed, opening a care package that smelled faintly of pine and home. She wondered, briefly, if anyone back there was looking at the same moon. The enemy adapted. Mortar fire rained closer, exploding against the rocks and showering her position with debris. A blast threw her, sideways, pain lancing through her ribs. She bit down on a cry and rolled, dragging herself behind cover. Blood seeped through her sleeve where shrapnel had torn skin, but the bone felt solid. She wrapped it tight, gritted her teeth, and crawled back into position. At one point, her rifle jammed. For a terrifying second, panic surged. Hawk forced it down, breathing through the fear, fingers working the mechanism with practiced ease. Click, clear. She smiled grimly. Not tonight. As midnight passed, snow began to fall, soft and silent, coating the battlefield in a fragile, almost holy calm. Hawk watched flakes drift through her scope, thought of carols and candles, of warmth and forgiveness. She whispered a prayer she hadn't said since childhood, not for herself, but for the men below, for the chance that they might go home and remember this night as something other than an ending. Near dawn, her vision blurred. She hadn't slept in over 30 hours, hadn't eaten since the day before. The enemy made one last push, emboldened by the quiet, convinced the sniper was finally down. Hawk summoned what she had left and stood, firing from a kneeling position, drawing their attention away from the compound. She felt a bullet tear through her pack, another graze her thigh. She stayed upright. Down below, Sullivan heard the change in the gunfire and knew. "They're flanking her," he said hoarsely. "If we don't move now." The sound of rotors cut through the air like a miracle. Hawk heard it too, faint at first, then growing. She laughed, a breathless, disbelieving sound. She fired her last rounds, then raised a flare with shaking hands and sent it screaming into the pale sky. The helicopter emerged through the clouds, guns blazing, scattering the enemy like shadows at dawn. When they found Hawk, she was slumped against the rocks, eyes half-lidded, snow dusting her hair. She looked up as they approached, recognition flickering. "Took you long enough," she murmured. Sullivan knelt beside her, gripping her shoulder. "You're coming home," he said fiercely. She smiled, small and tired. "Told you I'd still be here." Months later, back home, Hawk stood at a quiet memorial on Christmas Eve, the air cold but gentle. She carried scars now, some visible, some not. Her team stood with her, alive because she had refused to leave them behind. As candles flickered in the dark, Hawk understood something she hadn't that night on the mountain, that strength wasn't just about standing alone. It was about standing so others didn't have to. And every Christmas after, when the world felt a little kinder and the night a little less dark, they remembered the sniper who made one last stand so the rest could see another morning, and found hope in the simple, enduring truth that courage, like love, is strongest when it's given away.